I think people, when they think corporate wellness, they think it has to be boring. And I think that's an older school of thought. But like I said before, it can be fun and it can be, well, it should be fun should be personalized to the people that are in the organization and what you guys need. So if you're looking to support your employees and management and the organization, make sure it's fitted for that and not just, a out of the box kind of program. And it should be an enjoyable overall experience, not just the plain type of thing. And I think this is the older school of thought, but it should be a fun time. That's my last kind of word, just because it's an older thought of corporate wellness is this, and it shouldn't be.
Welcome back to another episode of A Plateful of Insight. I am your host, Andrea Shackle, and today we are going to be talking about something that impacts actually one third of our Canadian population, which is around burnout, and the workplace. And today we are going to be talking about all about workplace wellness. So whether you are joining us as a listener of, a person who is experiencing this, or maybe you're joining us as an employer looking for information for employee workplace wellness strategies, that is what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you for tuning in again. I am joined today with a very different collection from our usual, and we are joined by Revive Wellness's corporate wellness team to be able to talk about that. So I'm going to get everybody to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into this really interesting topic.
I guess I can start. My name is Heather Muller. I'm a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes educator, and I've been part of Revive Wellness for 7 years, I think. And I've had worn a different lot of hats, and always come back to the corporate side of things because I have a lot of passion for providing that feeling of sense of well-being and really being able to strive in the workplace, because that's where we can really shine and help support each other and add to ourselves as Canadians and really feel a sense of being.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. I'm Erica Matichuk. I have been with Revive Wellness for about 9 years, almost maybe. And same with me. Wear a lot of different hats there. I have built some resources for mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and I also work on the corporate side. I work specifically with clients to bring in corporate wellness and introduce new concepts into the workplace. Like Heather said, we spend a lot of time. If you're working full time, you spend a lot of time at the workplace. One third of our lives are spent there. And so it's really important that we are well and that we have this sense of belonging and a good workplace culture. So that is my passion as well.
Awesome. Well, I am excited. I think we should just jump right in. And actually, Erica, you kind of were already speaking on what I think we need to set the stage for, which is, why workplace wellness is important, why we're talking about it, because it seems to be a word that kind of people throw around, but actually what is it and why are we concerned about it?
Yeah, well, I think it used to be that having a good job was enough, and now it's more than that. So I think many talented workers tend to leave their workplace in today's day and age because they want something that aligns with their personal belief systems. And so um, I think employers are starting to realize that they need to have this authentic concern for their employees' well being. I mean, an employee wants their employer to care about their well-being, and good employers do understand that this healthy culture, one in which employees well-being is prioritized, equals a healthy and more likely to be successful company. I mean, I think it's just really important that we are caring about our employees and giving them the resources they need to stay healthy at work.
Yeah.
We know that having a healthy workplace trickles down into the family and We want that family because there is a sense of culture within the workplace. And then also for the employers, to have a long term employee is so important to be, like Erica said, employees aren't afraid to necessarily leave an unhealthy workplace. So to have to retrain to hire, that is a huge cost on an organization. So to ensure your employees are happy, not only is it a moral obligation, but for an organization, that's a huge just cost right there. So you're coming at it in two different ways.
Yeah. I think you both bring up very good points. So let's even so we know okay, so that's the importance of it then, but we also know that the reality is that a lot of people are experiencing some form of burnout or stress in the workplace or it's showing up in different ways. So yeah, maybe each of you can take a different way. Erica speaking how it could show up for the employee and then Heather how it could show up in the employer because it's going to show up differently and impact to what both of you are talking about, right? Like a healthy work culture and an organization. So, yeah, what could it show up, Erica, like as a working person?
I mean, I think we talked about it, but we really need to understand what our role of work is. And I mean, work is it's not the driving factor of our entire lives. We need to make sure that we're putting we're not putting our children and our family and our extracurriculars aside because we have to work extra. We need to do a better job of like understanding what the role of our work is in our lives because it's the biggest influencer of our well-being because we spend so much time there. So we need to just make sure that it's a positive influence and not a negative one. So I mean, looking at an unhealthy work environment, like that would be one that where you're constantly feeling anxious, stressed, maybe because there's not a sense of purpose there. You are feeling emotionally disconnected, like, or there's no emotion involved in your work. You're not passionate. It doesn't align with your true values. You have a stressful relationship with your colleagues or the person you report to might be a good indicator. If you're feeling stuck, if you feel like I don't really belong here, or there's no opportunity for growth, or no one's giving me any training on anything, those can be other signs. Um, the feeling of being micromanaged, like someone's looking over your shoulder, that's hard. And I think that that all contributes to workplace stress and lack of community and a lack of autonomy. Um, the other thing is if you find yourself working more than 40 hours a week, this will really interfere with your overall physical and mental health. So those couple things there are key indicators of, maybe not the most healthy relationship with work.
I, I think those are great, Erica. And actually, if you and even to take that further, right? If some of these things then start to show up in our non-work life, right? If there's anxious or stressed, it starts to pull from that balance and kind of leach into those other areas. So I think you touched on some really good ones.
Um, For sure. And like the other thing I forgot to mention is there's those physical side effects too of working long hours, not getting up and taking breaks. But like if you're sitting all day, there's this lack of movement, and then there's holding patterns that you can develop in your body. So there's those pains, right? Also, spending too much time at work, not taking that time for self-care. We spend less time in nature. We're always rushing in general and missing out on being present, right? And so, and we can talk about this a little bit later, but we think that we're good at multitasking. We really aren't good at multitasking, and so knowing what kind of tactics and tips to train your focus, and so that you get more time out of your day is really important too. We don't want to live in a reactive way, but I think that we find that we're so busy now, and we are continuously being hit with notifications, and more so than we were 20, 30 years ago, right? And so there's this reactive way of living where we're reacting to everything that comes up. So, which, you have this fight or flight reaction happening in your body all the time. So, yeah, we're busy, and we don't want to. We tend to forget about the life stuff that is probably more important.
Yeah. So very good. And not to mention sleep. Some of this stuff then impacts sleep if we're being overstimulated, working long, screen time, not getting out. So it does have an impact. And now, Heather, this also then translates to the employer. So if an employee is starting to feel this, what might that show up on the other side?
Well, you're going to see the productivity of just the employee and then the organization, the absenteeism, so sick days, injury, depending on what kind of organization it is. That retention rate, you're going to see that rollover, like I was mentioning before, which is going to affect that bottom dollar, use of EAPs, drug plans, all of those things. And they're the little things that end up costing organizations big. And then also just overall morale, and then social media impact. So people do talk depending on what type of organization it is. If you're in a certain industry, people are like, this is a good company, this is, this is where you want to be working. So it's just what your overall the thought is of that organization. And you want to be an industry leader, you want to be known for supporting your employees. That's what we want. And so those little things add up. And Erica, what you kind of talked about, those affect the employers as well. That affects the management. It's that adding up for the employers as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Heather. And I think employers are starting to realize this. Like we kind of touched on some of the stats out there, but people are way more willing to leave their job now, right? People are more willing to take a pay cut now. And so it's not necessarily about compensation. It's not necessarily about hierarchy and what role you play. It's more about how are my values aligned with the values of the organization? What kind of growth or training are they prepared to give me? And am I going to be able to?
Being met.
Yeah, but am I also going to be able to grow with this company while growing my natural abilities, right? And like really being able to share those abilities with my team and my environment, right?
And there's so many different options out there to be able to provide support to your teams. And I think that's why both of us are so passionate about being able to customize those wellness programs for the companies that we work with, because our team can provide so many different customized programs for different companies.
And I think there are trends that we find when working with corporations. However, more in more cases than not, it is a customized feel. Like we'll ask companies, what do they want more information on, or how can we coach you in corporate wellness? And it's not necessarily about like how to organize your time better or how to stay on top of your workload or how to set boundaries. Sometimes it's about how do we get better at sleep? How do we get better at
Moving your body, meditation.
exactly, and even like nutrition, right? Because these are all those key wellness pieces that we don't necessarily always attribute to energy at work or being focused at work. And so, but yet they have huge impacts, right? So
We did a cooking class for a huge company the other day, and it was team building. It was fun. People were talking, they were laughing. It wasn't just sitting in front, getting the education that people have gotten before. People have gotten these classes, but it was getting your hands dirty and looking at it a different way. And they're like, this is the best that we've had, and we've had these for years. But it's also getting your brain thinking about it in a different way, because lots of these principles you've heard from different people over the years, but it's also working together as a team because, like we were talking about, you spend a third of your waking hours at work. These are quote unquote a part of your family, your work family. So it's also getting this education in a different way and working together. So that's one of the fun parts about learning this in a different way as well.
Awesome. Okay, we are going to take this a little further because both of you are kind of touching on what can we do about this, kind of thinking outside the box of not just, yeah, how to manage tasks better or how to, organize your email, but more on, the individual. What can we do to kind of empower? And I know that's a really big thing that we've talked about in lots of our other episodes of the importance of, looking at all those areas to Erica's point, right? The nutrition, how we move, how we sleep, how we, manage self-care, how we manage just taking care of ourselves. So I think that's kind of the next thing we should go into is like, how do we then apply that to our own space to start that change?
Well, I mean, at a very high level, I think we need to start by working specific hours, having set hours, like really planning meticulously, planning our day. So, tackling priorities, making them first, planning out for strategic time. So, just setting this time aside and not having too many meetings, really like have taking control over that, because you can take control over that. Properly ending your day, right? Like not ending it with like closing those loose strings, just making sure that you're ending your day so that the start of your next day, you know where you ended. But then, like you said, Andrea, what are the other things we can do? Like, I mean, waking up well rested, avoiding social media and emails first thing in the morning until your workday begins, right? A lot of us wake up and check our phones. That does not send us on the right, it doesn't send us in the right direction. A lot of times that's associated with fight or flight. Um, Connecting with loved ones is huge. Like this is another session that we've done with corporations, because it's actually it's the number one piece um, to improve mental health is having and maintaining social connections. It doesn't have to be a lot of connections, but quality relationships at work, quality relationships at home can really increase our mental health. Um, Trying to set time aside so that things aren't rushed, right? We talked about our lives seeming a little more rushed all the time, and we've this feeling that we need to multitask and that there's never enough time. So maybe that's dinner time, setting some time aside to bond with family in an unrushed manner, and then always having time to wind down at the end of the day, right? You want to be able to fall asleep with ease. So that's again back to boundaries. We don't want to work right before bed, not checking email outside of those work hours. Just leave your work at your desk at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think all those are such great ones. That connection, um, trying to connect with those loved ones and tying things up, having the workday that lasts 30 minutes to ensure that you're kind of set up. And 30 minutes sometimes is a really far reach, but setting those to do lists, getting the top priorities done. And then trying to leave work at work as much as possible. It's easy to dictate our feelings when we're leaving the day, and especially with working from home, that leaving work at work it's really cross when your work is at home. So trying to get that leaving work at home, easier said than done lots of times, but trying to do that as well.
Yeah. I think, and totally speaking from like what I would see with clients, and we think about a lot of these things we're asking might not be either natural or things that we've done before, and these are going to be had to be behaviors that we're even just trying to see how they work, right? So even if I think about the nutrition aspects, as and Eric, you talked about like time management and blocking stuff off of, a lot of people aren't even blocking off lunch anymore or a pause in their day. So a lot of clients are like, oh, like my day is fully packed. Like, well, where was your Where was your break? Let's just start there. Let's even just try to find time, because I think that's part of time management is how do we find more time or use our time more effectively for what we need it to. But that's hard. Some of these things are hard to just like jump right in.
It is. And I mean, this just sounds like so trivial, but like honestly, you'd probably, if you actually like consciously designed your day and actually took note of how much time, and I don't even know how you could do it, but it's back to the whole multitasking thing. Like multitasking, we think, how many notifications do you get in a day? Like, I mean, since we've started this podcast, I think I've had 5 notifications that have come up. If we're constantly if we think for multitasking by going to that notification and coming back to an email and then going to that notification, there's that time lost in between, right? And so we need to get really good at unitasking, I'll call it. And that's like really training your focus. So instead of switching your attention between two things, I mean, I think that we need to actually take set specific time aside for specific things, uninterrupted. Because again, there's that blank time that it takes to switch between tasks. So I would say attention is our currency. We exchange our attention for our job. We exchange our attention for our relationships, our spouse, our kids. And it's not something that we're born with. It's actually a learned skill. No one is born knowing how to focus effectively. Like right now, like just think about what's holding you up right now. Train your focus to, what's holding you up. What's running, is the furnace running in the background? Do you have like is there cars driving by? This is like getting your 5 senses, so that you can focus in the present moment, so you can choose what you're paying attention to. And I think for humans, that's our competitive advantage. We can shift what we're paying attention to. So we need to be able to practice being focused. Back to my point. Sorry, I tend to ramble. But yeah, like if we're focusing our attention on a specific experience, like drinking our coffee, if and when our thoughts wander, we bring it back to the task at hand. So this is again bringing in your 5 senses while experiencing that warm drink. And practicing consistently is important because we're training our brain on how to pay attention.
Yeah. Heather, you spoke about transitions, which is a big one that kind of came from a big chunk of that came from working from home. But I also see of like time management and boundaries, like they also go with transitions. So any thought on boundaries of how we do that? Because I think that's going to help then with what Erica's referring to, right? To find the uninterrupted time, the focus, but we also have this boundary component.
And that comes from that pleasing of employers and employees, and then of that boundaries, and then knowing when to set off do not disturb, turning off your team's like notifications, whatever Outlook, setting your reminders or just updates like we'll be back in office, if can respond to notifications. And especially in this time and age, we're available 24/7 essentially, with cell phones, with iPads, tablets. But it's okay to say, we'll answer at such and such day. If I receive one of those, I'm like, okay, like I response then. But to set those, sometimes I'm like, oh, because I'm known to be available at all times. But it feels really good to set those. And I think just setting them more often, it becomes then, like you said, that behavior. And as in that management position, it's almost like, oh, does that mean that I'm not, as available then for my team? But you're setting that then leading by example. And so it's important for those managers and employers to be leading by example of turning off those notifications and not being available 24/7, because we don't expect our team to be. So as that management employers, it's important to also set those boundaries and those times that we are and not available. And I also know I kind of went, but it's important to be able to set those and have those transitions. And I heard this really, I was at a conference this weekend, a mental wellness one, and it was also thinking, is this a feather or a brick? And I'm sure you guys have heard this, but when something comes up, you need to think, am I going to think of this as a feather issue or a brick feather? And if every little thing we think that's a brick, by the end of the day, you're carrying a bunch of bricks. And that's hard to move forward with. But when things come up, I think, oh, that's just a feather. That's just a feather. Then I can continue to move forward. And even setting like those boundaries, that's a feather. That's not a brick. So I can set those boundaries. So it was just a really good analogy that I hadn't heard of before. And I'm like, I am using that. So you can use that even within the wellness space, the workplace wellness space. So that was just a little nugget that I want to leave or like bring in as well.
Yeah, I love that, because we all are guilty of like having too many bricks, and then we feel overwhelmed. And when we feel overwhelmed, it's like, how do I even start? Right. And so that's that all or nothing thinking that typically comes into, our work environment. And I think that that's another good piece of advice. All or nothing thinking, we really have to get past that because it's about the little things. It's about celebrating the little wins, about being self compassionate. I mean, sometimes I like put the smallest little thing, I write it down just to check it off, right? It's ridiculous. Like, it's like, got up every 90 minutes and did jumping jacks, like just something.
When my watch told me to move, I did it.
Right. Right. And so it just feels good to check something off. And so, yeah, it's better to do one thing than nothing at all. Yeah, the feathers.
That's the first time I've heard of that one actually, but you can really visually feel that one of like, whew. Um, any other things that we think would be good as, yeah, an employee or employer of things that we can do to try to help with this or help prevent burnout? I always say like prevent, like it probably does happen, right? Just the way our society is, like it could be there. It's also normal to feel stressed or anxious, depending on if there's like deadlines, things like that, right? There might be moments of that might not be able to be fully not there. But yeah, what are some other strategies to help people with this?
I mean, time management can be hard. Like ideally and on paper, it seems like, okay, this is easy, but nothing ever works out the way that you want it to. And so, prioritize every day and then the next day reprioritize. You're not going to get it all done. Try to be realistic. I think that we all expect the most out of ourselves. And so then we are unrealistic with deadlines and, objectives. And so then we're down, then we're also the worst to ourselves. We are the worst negative self-talkers, right? So try to really pad your workday in deadlines and timelines, right? But it's funny, when you were asking that question, Andrew, I was thinking about, we've done this resiliency training with a lot of different organizations, and it's 5 to 6 sessions that we do with them on self-care and lifestyle habits, right? And building resiliency is so that we can adapt to change. And I think that how we can better manage change is becoming used to novelty, right? And so what I mean by that is change something up in your day. Tie your shoe with, or I mean, write your name with the wrong hand, or take a different route home from work. I think like some people might resonate with like the idea of traveling. When you have to travel for work, you have to use your brain in a different way. You have to be more effective. You need to figure out where to go. And that challenges our resiliency because there's change there, right? When there's no change, we become very comfortable. And that's dangerous. We don't want to be comfortable all the time. Because then when change happens, we are less able to adapt and persevere. And so like having novelty in your day, just practicing just the little tiny changes can actually be quite effective for when the actual real stuff happens, when life throws you those curveballs. So
And I think taking advantage of we live in a high tech world, taking advantage of those type of things when applicable, and when possible. Like our organization has created an amazing platform using those things, but then also using people. So having the mix of, like you said, those sessions of having people coming in to corporations and talking, but then also having something that people can interact with in their own time to provide that support, meeting people with where they're at. People are working at home on their wellness. Now bring it into the workplace and do it as a team. So really embracing where people are at within their own environment, doing check-ins, quarterly check-ins, asking those questions, and then seeing where you can support people taking advantage of benefits, those type of things. They're there for a reason.
Yeah, and then I mean the best time to act is now, right? So being proactive, because we all get to the space where we're not feeling well mentally or physically, or we're, at that state of being overwhelmed. And so it's really important to practice those good behaviors when things are good, so that when things are bad, you have that to fall back on.
And I think, Erica, too, that we spoke about that in lots of other episodes as well, is sometimes we actually just need to stop and self-reflect of like what's going on, what are the things that are coming up for me? What is this? And what can I do about it? To again challenge that we're just in a comfort routine. This is just what always we do. But sometimes we forget actually just the stopping and going, holy crow, like what's going on? What is this? What am I feeling? Which, yeah, we pretty much talked about in every single episode and on every topic that we talked about how important that actually is, as well as also I know that it's an important piece of the corporate wellness, right? Of that reflections and whether how my staff is doing or how I'm, showing up too. So I think that piece is really important.
You got it.
Okay, so before we wrap up on this, I feel like we could talk for a long time. There's lots of different things here. But yeah, any other kind of either last thoughts on this topic or anything else that we haven't touched on?
I think people, when they think corporate wellness, they think it has to be boring. And I think that's an older school of thought. But like I said before, it can be fun and it can be, well, it should be fun, and should be personalized to the people that are in the organization and what you guys need. So if you're looking to support your employees and management and the organization, make sure it's fitted for that and not just, a out of the box kind of program. And it should be an enjoyable overall experience, not just the plain type of thing. And I think this is the older school of thought, but it should be a fun time. That's my last kind of word, just because it's an older thought of corporate wellness is this, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, again, we've transitioned from a world we've transitioned from really being more interested in our jobs and how they align and reflect our personal values. And so I think even flipping work-life balance to life-work balance is important, right? It requires a lot of wisdom as to who you are. So that self-reflection piece that you mentioned, but also like a really purposeful way of living, and a deep respect for your overall time. And so again, that's knowing who you are, knowing what's important to you in your life. We talked about creating those real boundaries between work and life, and then just practicing good setting good boundaries, good time management, just structuring your calendar as best as you can.
Well, I definitely think there is a lot of good stuff in here, a little bit for, yeah, whoever is listening. If you're listening as a just an employee, or you're a person, looking at bringing in fun, to quote Heather, into corporate wellness. There's different ways to be able to do that. And we also talked about today that Revive Wellness does have corporate wellness offerings. So, if that's something you're interested, please reach out. We will attach that as well. If that's something that you are interested in. I also want to mention too, just to wrap up, if you are listening and you are struggling and you are having a hard time, to make sure you are reaching out to whoever would be best supported, whether that's, a family member or a colleague, or, or to your employer for that communication, or, to seek outside support as well. So we want to recognize that, as well, is not to suffer alone and to reach out so we can, be the best version of yourself. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to thank Heather and Erica for joining us today on workplace wellness. If this is something that you had never heard of, we hope that you got a little bit of something out of it. We also love to hear from you. So if there's something that you do either yourself to keep up your own wellness, or if there's something that you would like to hear from our team to be able to do, or reach out, please do so, or please share this with somebody who might find it interesting as well. So stay tuned for another episode of A Plate Full of Insights. And thank Erica and Heather and Erica for joining us today. My goodness. Okay.
Thanks, Andrea.